tell you the honest truth, I never was a believer in spin. I thought spin was totally overrated. But that club made a believer out of me.
You used to play wedge shots, you'd flight it up high and land it in soft. All of a sudden you get a spin milled in your hand. It was almost opposite. You would fly the ball in low, penetrating, aggressive ball flight. It takes one big hop and stops next to the pin. It became the shot that everyone wanted to hit, that low one, and it's still the recipe for a great wedge shot. And it started all the way back with spin mill. Today, grooves are a fundamental part of the golf club. But way back when, golf clubs didn't have grooves, and people way before our time decided, hey, we should put something on the club face to channel things like grass, sand, debris into that groove so the ball can hit the edge of that groove and grip. That's how you get spin. And spinner's control. You know, 100 years later, someone like Bob Vokey comes along and says, I'm going to really zero in on it and see if there's something more that we can't get out of it.
Spin Mill project started in 2001.
Around that time, the golf ball was changing pretty significantly. We were transitioning to solid cores with urethane covers. Distance was the name of the game.
We were hitting it further than ever. But with distance comes a lack of spin.
Get a player one day, comes up to me and says, Bob, he said, I'm just not spinning it the way I would like to do. Do you have any suggestions? And so I was trying to come up with different grooves. Back then, grooves would be either pressed into the face or cast. We weren't equipped to cut in grooves at that particular time. But I knew a machine shop down the road. They would fly cut the face, make it perfectly flat.
A radial texture would be etched into the face to give it a little more grip on the ball. And then the grooves were cut by a little saw, just like you see here.
The saw would leave a very sharp edge. The first time I pulled it out of my bag, my buddy's on the green, and I hit the shot, and the ball comes off low, and I said, oh God, that's gonna go in the houses. Hits the green, my buddy's up by the pin, I see his head go like this. And he goes, what the blankety blank was that, Volk? I just said, I just got game. But I know I couldn't hit that shot with any other club that I've tried. I took that particular groove and I let this tour player hit it, and he absolutely loved it. He was playing in a tournament, and one other player picked up his wedge. He says, what have you got there? He said, oh, it's just this wedge that Bob Vokey cuts these special grooves in for me. But I'm at home watching this on television, and I'll never forget, I just slid off the couch. I went, oh my God, why did you say that? We don't even make that groove. But meanwhile, the cat's out of the bag.
The performance of the product was obvious. And more players kept coming to us saying, I want that wedge. How did he do that?
Once it got out and players were talking about it with their buddies, this thing spreads like wildfire.
When I saw the amount of orders I was getting from players on tour, and then the best players in the world winning with them, that's when I knew, doggone, we got something here.
And what was once 10 wedges in play now is 50, and then 100, 200, 300. And before you know it, it is the #1 wedge on tour.
It was about a 4-year period where we went from one player playing a spin-milled wedge to essentially 40% of all professional tour players worldwide. It was quick.
It was tough stuff. I tell you, you talk about turning gray. I'm only 40 years old. Look at me now, though. I look like I'm 80.
Bob finds this way to improve the process and get a more consistent groove. And as it gains the momentum with golfers everywhere around the world, the game changed.
In 2007, we get the announcement that there's going to be a groove rule change. And the clear intent of the rule was to reduce spin, specifically spin from the rough.
Remember, grass is about 80% water, so this is a great shot that shows you just what happens. The grass is channeled away from the ball makes great contact with the club, but that is not necessarily going to be the case next year when they change these grooves.
So beginning in 2010, the volume's going to be specific and smaller. The sharpness of the corners is going to be specific and rounder. We had to develop a condition of competition wedge, and then comes the need to refit tour players all over the world.
In 10 months, I had 10 months to convert about 750 players to a conforming spin mill wedge.
It was a crazy time. We were going 7 days a week. We were bringing pizzas in on Saturday and Sunday, just trying to keep people safe. And you know what? Every time I came in, Bob was there. I saw it firsthand, just the level of care from him about his product and the players and making sure that we were doing the absolute best possible work for them.
Unbelievable year. I hate to say it was a year I'd like to forget, but I'd say I think I learned a heck of a lot also.
When we launched the conforming groove in 2010, ball flight was a lot higher, it was shorter. We saw noticeably less spin on the greens.
We lost half the spin we were getting, particularly out of the rough. So from there, the challenge is, okay, how do we innovate again?
One of the cool additions to the team at that point in time is Kevin Tesistro.
I started working with Vokey in the summer of 2010. The new USGA rule had just come up. It was an exciting time for me and for the team. We got around a table and said, how do we make a better wedge? That was our goal moving forward.
How we doing?
All good?
Good. Good to see you.
As we were evolving this groove, we were learning that lofts play a pretty important role in how that ball and that face work together.
The job of a groove is to channel debris into it so the ball can hit the edge of that groove and grab. Well, it's going to be different on a full swing pitching wedge versus a lob wedge laid open around the green.
Our team realized, hey, we can't just have the same groove throughout our entire line. We need to create two separate grooves that do two separate things.
So the lower lofts have a narrower and deeper groove. We want to make sure that the debris is going down into the bottom of the groove. On those higher lofts, the score lines are wider and a little bit shallower. We want to make sure that the debris is sheared away from the club face so that those top edges of the score lines are imparting maximum spin. The next step, make sure that those scoreline edges were consistent. So we start looking at everything. And one of those things we looked at was the radial texture. That small microscopic texture on the face is going to give you a little bit extra spin, but it creates peaks and valleys along the groove edge, a variance of 2/10,000ths of an inch.
The change we made was a parallel texture. So we could create a perfectly uniform groove, top and bottom, from the toe to the heel.
2/10,000ths of an inch doesn't sound like a lot, but it can account for 300 to 500 RPMs of spin. And these small little details can make a huge difference.
You know, that's a difference of a 20-footer and a 12-footer and a birdie and a par. Don't move, Hall.
Oh, I like that. That's the difference between beating your friends, winning your first tournament,
What a performance this man's put on today.
or winning your first major.
And at the end of the day, it could be the difference between walking off 18 with a 6 on the card or walking off with a smile.
Yeah, I'll see you later. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. It's fun.
When you look back at the original spin-milled groove, it was really just the beginning. Initially, it was a way to cut a big, sharp groove that gave you a ton of spin. But the legacy of spin-milled is that it changed the way wedges are made. It changed the way the short game is played. And I think made the game a lot more enjoyable for a lot of golfers.
That felt amazing.
After all these years, every club that we've done, we've always wanted to make sure we did the best that we could possibly do. Because we're trying to help players enjoy the game more and play better golf. That's what we do.